Let me tell you about a kid, only 15 years. Eddie Obrien, caught in the gears. Political pawns, they played their game. Power and money all in his name. But was tight with will, no simple fate. Climbed the ladder, sealed Eddie's state. Wayne, but a prosecutor with a purpose. In the court of politics, none could touch us. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Riley and Bud, best friends since youth, built a law firm, they spun the truth. When Riley took the case, he was never alone. Built on foundations, powerfully grown. With the Budwell network, they made a show. Charlie Baker in the mix, he's part of the flow. All linked together, climbing the heights. On Eddie's back, they rose to new sights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's case became the ground they break. Kimberly Budd, her name now in lights. Chief Justice of the court in the highest of fights. Calls Riley godfather, mentor, uncle too. Let that sink in deep, Eddie's pain paved through. Judge Heffernan ruled fair, you played your part. But the pressure came down like a storm in the dark. It wasn't about truth, wasn't about rights. It was all about power and their political heights. This ain't just a story, it's a legacy. Eddie was the stone that shaped their destiny. With every connection, every hand they shake, Eddie's... dangerous to damage, though that's not who he was. Just a child in a system without a pause. Every single expert, they knew the facts. Non-violent heart, it's not an act. He was meant for healing, not this dark fate. But the court turned blind and sealed up the gate.
I have a
they focused on the wounds as if pain could define the essence of a kid who's meant to shine. A constitutional failure right before our eyes, lost in the shuffle where justice dies. America, can you see? Can you open the door to the game. Every story is a lesson, not just for today. A reminder to listen, to show a better way. When the voices of the many are ignored with disdain, we've lost the battle and it's all in vain. Let the echoes of the experts ring loud and clear. For every Eddie standing there, we cannot disappear.
Oh, yeah. What's up, everybody? How we doing, man? Welcome to another one, another Friday edition, man. Happy Friday, everybody. You know, look, I got my DND shirt by Ferris. I don't know if y'all can see the whole shirt in here, this is the Bird, this is the Larry Bird versus Magic edition, man. I bought a bunch of these shirts when they came out from D&D. I paid like almost $100 a piece for these things. But good morning to the mods. Attention mods. I want the mods to be, during the interview when we do it. You already know, no disrespect. Get them out of there if anyone's disrespecting. They could ask questions to the O'Briens, but I don't want to see no attacking the family. I never allow people to attack any of our guests. But Sunday, man, it's going to be a great, great weekend. It really is. We got a Margo Nash, series that we've been talking about, the politics of murder. Margo Nash, what a great book. Part 2 is going to be coming out soon. Eddie's ready to file his Rule 30 motion. Salute to that. Good morning to the chat. But if you were around back in 1996, and if you remember Eddie Obrien, if you lived in Somerville, if you knew the family, if you knew the neighborhood, or you've been holding on to a piece of this story for almost 30 years, and you would like to come show on the show as a guest, or you would like to just show what evidence you have of what you've been holding on and let us view it to our audience, you want to share your memories, your perspective, your truth about this case, definitely email us. Can we keep it real? One word, the number 5 at gmail.com. But we're building a story, with the people who lived it. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Your experience from 1995. Everybody share this, please, so we could reach more people. But if you were there, we definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear from you, man. But if you've been rocking with the story, following every chapter of the Eddie Obrien case, every chapter, every breakdown, every receipt that is being pulled, man, you already know. Whether you've seen it over on the JFK show, whether you've seen, some of the evidence that we've been putting out there, breaking down the DNA, breaking down the blood work. This is where we drop the details that don't make it to the main show, where the community gets tighter, they get louder, they get stronger. We're going to have some standouts coming soon, but this weekend, Trisha and Ed O'Brien's going to be pulling up. A surprise guest drops the kind of truth you can't put on public YouTube. Someone's going to be members only. Then stop playing and grab them memberships. And you're not just supporting the channel, you're supporting the work that the channel does. You're supporting the investigation, the storytelling, the fight for justice. You're supporting to help pay for any FOIA requests, Rule 30 requests, any new equipment that we end up needing. That's where your donations go to. Yeah, definitely hit that join button, step into a membership. Make sure you're members. You can get gifted memberships. Make sure that is turned on. Yep, and we're going to talk about it today, actually. We are going to talk about it today. Things that they failed to investigate, false statements, ignored evidence, whatever it may be. But today I want to talk about how the Proctor Goode corruption can help Eddie, a Rule 30 motion. 30 years later, who would have thought Proctor, from a Karen Reed case, would be able to help Eddie Obrien? And everybody knows Rule 30 is basically Massachusetts do-over button. It's the my bad button. Staples has one. Everybody has one, right? It's the do-over button. Do that shit over. If new evidence shows the investigation, or trial was unfair towards Eddie Obrien, whether you could show that the investigation or trial was corrupt, or you could show that shit was just unconstitutional, the court must reconsider the conviction. And I think Eddie has enough for the court to reconsider an eviction. Yeah, I mean, a conviction. So the question becomes really, as we mentioned, the Proctor Goode scandal, you know, it showed that mass police can do and run biased, corrupt investigations. But we already know that, right? We already knew that since 1995, 96, 97. I mean, not just that, oops, we made a mistake. We're talking, oh shit. Like, this is straight up willful misconduct. Some intentional bias shit right here. Ignoring the evidence, right? Planting narratives. This is what Riley has been doing in that office for a long time, and he has no problem doing it. He has no problem lying. That's probably how he became a full-fledged alcoholic, allegedly. Protecting the insiders, protecting his cronies, targeting people on the outside that maybe are, putting up a beef against Riley. I mean, the corruption goes far. And if you think the corruption stops right here in Massachusetts or Rhode Island or Virginia or Connecticut or wherever you lay your damn head, you're crazy. Or more people need to talk about this corruption because constitutional rights are being violated. This is exactly the kind of stuff that Rule 30s were made for. And it proves a pattern of corruption, right? And it's not a one-off pattern. It's not even like it's only proven one-off. No. Courts love to push these narratives. The motives, the methods, the habits behind the narratives. The institutional behavior behind the narratives. I mean, what the Proctor Goode texts show is not a single bad cop. It shows a culture inside Mass State Police and also Canton Police Department. Yep, we found it right here. Yep, 1 minute. Have to share our screen. So yeah, we're gonna bring one of our legal, Professor Mike is coming into today. How you doing? One of our legal minds. Shout out to 2 cents worth in the house, Help Mikey, help Eddie. Absolutely, man. Everybody help me, help Eddie. And Freebird has been a lot of help. Let me get the book out of the way. Put the book down, Eddie. Put the book down. There you go. Thank you. So, we saved you all types of stuff and we went through the entire motion. Free Eddie Obrien, lock up Tom Riley. Absolutely, man. Can we get a 1 in the chat to lock up Tom Riley? So, All right, let's read this first. Now, we went straight to page 21 out of 87 because I think, and Freebird will explain this as we go over it. Should be with Freebird's in the chat. I'm going to explain it. I'll read it and explain what I have so far. Kevin Dwyer to investigate Proctor's lewd text messages regarding Miss Reed. The Mass State Police inexplicably assigned two non-OPIA troopers, Major Benson and Captain Barrows, to perform curse and brief interviews of the Proctors and Alberts, inquiring about their personal relationships with one another. The Proctors and the Alberts were not confronted with any text or social media post deciphering their decade-long family-like bond. No outside witnesses were interviewed, no cell phones were seized, and no evidence was presented. It was not just reasonably foreseeable, but nearly certain that the Mass State Police and the CPD failure to use ordinary care in selecting to whom they would input power would result in members of the public targeting and severely impacted by officers and troopers. Elemental shortcomings. Put differently, the bias and corrupt investigation that harmed Miss Reed was natural consequences. Really? You're going to say that was natural consequences? Yuck. Miss Reed was the natural consequence of Mass State Police and Canton Police Department hiring and promoting biased and corrupt law enforcement officers in line with their barely concealed willingness to dehumanize and condemn people, coupled with their readiness to ignore or overlook objective evidence. Where was I? Hiring and promoting biased and corrupt law enforcement officers in line with barely concealed willingness to dehumanize and condone people, coupled with their readiness to ignore or overlook objective evidence. Proctor and Goode began the investigation against the female So let's see. So put differently, the bias and corrupt investigation that harmed Miss Reed was natural consequences of Mass State Police and Canton PD hiring and promoting bias and corrupt law enforcement. In line with their barely concealed willingness to dehumanize and condone people, coupled with the readiness to ignore or overlook objective evidence, Proctor and Goode began the investigation against a female outsider with bias and prejudice fueled by their bigotry. After Proctor and Goode launched the biased and corrupt investigation, other police officers followed suit and caused harm to Miss Reed. After the start of the investigation, other Mass State Police and Canton PD also contributed to the unlawful investigation that stripped Miss Reed of her constitutional rights. Mass State Police and Canton PD are liable for the negligent hiring, training, and supervision of these other officers whose wrongful acts also contributed to the harm suffered by Miss Reed. So now that we have that, now that we said all that, the blue wall of shame. That's right. What did Alan Jackson? It's not no blue line. It's too small to be a line. It's the blue wall. I can count the men I do hate on one hand. Okay, absolutely. And Eddie's innocent, period. It was beyond Eddie's case. It's way beyond Eddie's case is exposed for a wrongful conviction 31 years later. It's coming. And that's what we try and do every day. Just put this case out there and let people hear the truth about the case. We don't need to lie. We just tell the truth. But now let's break this down, right? See, basically, if this shows that there's new evidence shows that the trial was unfair, but if the evidence shows the investigation or trial was unfair based on corruption or unconstitutional, so the court must reconsider the conviction. So the question becomes, does Proctor and Goode scandal show that mass police can and do run biased, corrupt investigations? We already know that, right? We know that the mass state police, the way that their hiring process, how they train their guys, they train them so they can make mistakes. But Proctor and Goode scandal now shows that the Massachusetts State Police can run biased, corrupt investigations. They have been running biased, corrupt investigations, right? I mean, we're talking what? Willful misconduct, unintentional bias, right? Planting bullshit narratives, right? Lying, protecting insiders, targeting insiders, violating constitutional rights. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that Rule 30s are designed on. These Rule 30s are built on stuff like this. And number two, it proves a pattern of corruption, right? Not a one-off mistake. I mean, count the patterns because courts love this shit. It's going to show motive, shows method, patterns show habits, culture, inside behavior. What the Proctor Goode text shows is not a single bad cop, right? It shows a culture inside the Mass State Police and the Canton PD. We'll be right back, people. We're proving this one document at a time.
Sealed up the gate. Oh. 15 years old, life in a flash. Eddie O'Brien's dreams turned to ash. Caught in a storm of political lies. Justice was blind, just heard the cries. In 95, when the law turned cold, a tale of the super predator, truth untold. The DA's game, playing with fate, manipulated minds, sealing Eddie's slate. Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. Exculpatory truths left on the shelf. Margo, Nash spoke, revealing the stealth. Turning pages, the story unfolds. The politics of murder, a truth bold, and in every corner, the whispers of doubt. A system that's rigged, can't we just shout? Behind those bars, he's waited too long. An innocent heart, where does he belong? Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. Reevaluate, we're raising the stakes. Time to uncover the truth for justice's sake. No more suppression, let the voices ring. Together we rise, it's a hell of a thing. We'll sign the petition, take back the night. Fighting for Eddie, we'll win this fight. Oh, Eddie, hold on tight. We're dancing for the truth tonight. Break the chains, let the world see. Your voice is strong, it's time to be free. Justice for Eddie, justice for all. We'll rise together, we'll never fall. More than half a life in a crowded cage, but hope knows no bounds. It's never too late. Hear the rhythm, feel the beat. Justice is coming, can't accept defeat. No more shadows, let the truth shine bright. Eddie O'Brien, ready for the fight. So let's light the way with our hearts ablaze. Dancing for justice, we're entering a new phase. Sign for Eddie, let the world know. We're standing together, we're ready to go.
All right, here we are. We're back. Appreciate all, for giving me a minute. Yeah, we're talking about how the Proctor Goode corruption, could it help the Eddie O'Brien case? And we look at the docket that was just released yesterday, and we go over to page 21. How many? I think there was 90 people altogether that was
Over 24,000 cases, convictions. Like 90 of them, 93 individuals been formally
thank you for the 20, Mike. Thank you. You are appreciated greatly. Let's go. Free Eddie. Eddie is innocent. Absolutely, man. Thank you. Really appreciate you. So it proves that this isn't just a one-time, a one-off. I would say it proves that this isn't just a one-off. What happened to Karen Reed, that the Mass State Police has been doing this for a long ass time. It proves that the court loves when this shit happens. Motive, method. It proves, habit, culture. This is what the Mass State Police does. This is what their hiring practice. And I think that, Eddie could probably really use this information. And what the Proctor Goode text shows is not a single bad cop. It's not just showing Proctor and Goode is bad. It shows that they got that way because a culture inside the Mass State Police, a culture inside the Canton Police Department, right, is biased. Cops are biased, and it's the way that the Mass State Police is training their cadets that's making them biased. How they're training them trains them to have bias investigations. They're being trained to target certain people. The Mass State Police is being trained to protect their own. Boy, how many agree with that they protect their own? They ignore evidence. They lie on reports. All this stuff has been going on, and this is just more proof that it's still going on. Yes, it's at Can We Keep It Real? Venmo at Can We Keep It Real? Or you can just take a picture of that, or you can't even really see it, can you? I'll put it up on the screen.
I can see a little bit. There you go. Yep, right there.
I actually have it up on the screen. I can get it. I have it downloaded here. But yeah, it's just at Can We Keep It Real? Venmo at Can We Keep It Real? True Crime has just put a stat out there. Massachusetts has a rate of 3.14 wrongful convictions per 100,000 residents over the last 5 years. The data shows the registry estimates 4% to 6%. 4% to 6% of prisoners have been wrongly incarcerated. The state ranks 9th nationally for wrongful convictions, with exonerated individuals serving an average of 25 years behind bars before being cleared. Wow, so they get 25 years out of you before they say, my bad, you can go now. So when Michael Proctor and Goode, their text is, showing that it's not a single bad cop, but it's a culture. It's what the Mass State Police are training their men for bias investigations, to target people, to ignore evidence that doesn't fit their narrative, to lie on police reports. Celebrate when your fellow brethren, is, harming another person. Yes, we cheer that on. This is what the Mass State Police and other police departments around New England, around the world, this is what they have been championing on. I mean, this is really gold for a Rule 30 motion, because Eddie's team can argue some things here, right? They can argue that this isn't new behavior with the Mass State Police CPAC unit, with the district attorney's office. This is how they have been operating for decades, and it's still going on. Yeah, YouTube does take 30%. You are not kidding. Yeah, I would rather anyone, if you want to donate, Venmo is the way to go. Cash App, YouTube takes a big chunk of it, 30%. And then you figure another 10% goes on taxes, and you figure, so I figured, I think I came up with like about, after everything's all paid, maybe 25, 30%. But then I'm still missing a whole bunch here. But this isn't new behavior. This is how the Commonwealth has been operating for decades. So I think it shows the type of misconduct that Eddie's team has been claiming for 30 years. And this is why I'm saying this document right here, I think it really, really helps. Our legal team that we have working, Can We Keep It Real as a legal team? Imagine that. Shout out to the Can We Keep It Real legal team that's working behind the scenes, studying, researching case, using their own time, So congratulations to them, and we're just going to keep working, So if you have information, get it over to our legal team. Can we keep it real 5@gmail.com if you have any kind of documents, pitches related to this case or, similar cases. But Eddie's defense has always said what? That the police ignored evidence, right? That the police rushed to judgment, right? That the police was targeting kids, right? The police protected their own. They hid exculpatory information. They failed to investigate an alternative suspect. We talked about this all week. What else did the police do? Come on, people. What else? They lied about what? They lied about the timeline. Come on, it can't be just me. Code of silence. Police mishandled the evidence. They manipulate whatever they can. So they manipulate basically everything. So now we have modern proof that the Mass State Police and the Canton Police Department do exactly that. So I think Eddie's lawyer can take this and wrap this into his Rule 30 as well. And say, this is what has been going on to me for 3 decades. This is called cooperation. It doesn't matter that it's a different case, right? It proves the institutional behavior that Eddie has been up against for 30 years. I mean, it don't matter. And that ain't it. Like, it also shows, right, that the Mass State Police and Canton PD's leadership knew about corruption. And guess what they did? They did nothing. They did nothing. It shows that the Mass State Police, the Canton PD, they knew about all this stuff that was going on. Shout out to my man Joe working his balls off. Shout out to him, man. Wanted to say hello to everyone. Be back tomorrow. Nothing but love. Shout out to JoJo. JoJo, I'm telling him right now that this new information we got from the Karen Reed case, it shows that the Mass State Police and local police departments have been breeding these cops to work like this. And this can definitely, I think, help in Ed's case. I think this is huge, bro. You know, shout out to Freebird too for finding this stuff. I mean, the system was compromised. You know, they've been training their officers to be to be biased, bro. You know, the agencies involved are all corrupt. The cops are robbers, not only in mass, but especially in mass, honestly, but it shows that these police departments involved are corrupt and they were training their officers to be corrupt. The defendant's rights were violated. Eddie's rights were violated. So a new filing should show that the leadership knew, that they ignored it, that they allowed bias investigations to continue. They knew the investigations into people like Eddie and many others were biased and they ignored them. That means Eddie's case wasn't an accident. Eddie's case was a product of the system. Shout out Big Ed. He says there is an estimated 20,000 up to 100,000 innocent people sitting in jail today. It's hard to calculate because they don't have the resources to fight back. Absolutely. They don't have the damn resources. You know, the leadership allowed these bias investigations to continue. So Eddie's case was not an accident. Yep, I'll check right now. Make sure I didn't have the last four numbers to confirm going to Eddie's defense for now. All right, I'll go check that out in a minute. Defendants challenge forensics to unsurprised leads. Prosecutors typically argue police acted in good faith. I guess the good faith excuse is out the door now. Yeah, it shows that bad investigations are not hypotheticals, right? Something that we've seen in Riley's notes. They're documented. And for years, people said, what? Come on, man, cops don't do that. Come on, cops wouldn't ignore evidence. Cops are not going to target somebody. Cops wouldn't lie. Jojo, cops are not going to lie. You think cops are going to protect their friends? Because this is all the shit the police academy trains them to do. And now we have text messages. We have reports. We have lawsuits, right? Federal filings and internal documents. You know, federal documents proving yes. And if evidence integrity cannot be trusted under modern standards, it certainly cannot be blindly accepted from a rushed 1995 political environment. You know, and this destroys the credibility of the Commonwealth's investigation in Eddie's case, if you ask me. I think it also opens the door to institutional misconduct evidence. You know, the same agency that railroaded Cameron Reed are the same agency that railroaded Eddie Obrien and many others. This is called patterns. You know that. I mean, courts take it seriously, right? Because if an agency has this type of documented history of being biased, of corruption, ignoring the evidence, targeting outsiders, Protecting insiders, then every conviction they touched becomes questionable, including Eddie's conviction. Does anybody disagree with what I'm saying? I mean, then every conviction they touched becomes questionable. It definitely gives, I think, Eddie's attorney new grounds for an appeal, right? But the key is what, right? The Rule 30 requires new evidence. Do we have new evidence for a Rule 30? I mean, the Proctor Goode scandal is new, right? That can be considered new evidence. It's documented. It's official, right? It's public. And it's undeniable. So, I mean, if this is what you want something new, you got to be documented, you want it to be official, a public record that's just undeniable. And what does it prove? It proves that there's corruption inside the Mass State Police, that there's corruption inside the Canton PD, that there's biased investigations, constitutional violations, right? There's cover-ups amongst leadership. This is exactly the kind of bullshit of newly discovered evidence Rule 30 motions are built on, people. This is what the shit's built on. This can definitely help Eddie, and it should. Because what we see now is not just corruption, right? This would have went right over our heads. It's the blueprint of how Eddie's investigation was handled and how a lot of investigations after Eddie was handled. I mean, it shows you the shortcuts, the lies, the bias, the friggin' tunnel vision. How about inside protection? What were they doing? But I mean, the blueprint into this investigation, I'm going to write it down and put it in.
Ouch.
Then we're going to play a song, go check on the Venmo and all that good stuff. Give me a minute. We'll be right back, people, man. Shout out to all of you. Appreciate y'all holding us down.
Courtroom lights, truth's gonna bend. Heffernan standing tall, trying to defend. Said it looked bad on paper, but it's all deeper. Politics lurking, call it a grim reaper. Eddie was just a kid, caught in the fray. But the power players had a game to play. From day one, they wanted him to fall. kid in the spotlight, crushed by it all. Heffernan knew the truth. No, it ain't fair. Politics behind the scenes, no one would care. Guilty or innocent, the verdict was set. Justice wasn't blind, it was a political bet. Dr. Bonham was chosen, thought he would be right, a face of fairness in that long, dark night. But the DA smiled wide, played both sides slick. Heffernan thought neutral, but maybe that's the trick. Eddie's fate sealed with a stroke of a pen. My ruling was sound, but the world turned again. They needed him guilty to fit their plan, change the laws mid-game. Oh, what a scam! Heffernan knew the truth. No, it ain't fair. Politics behind the scenes, no one would care. Guilty or innocent, the verdict was set. Justice wasn't blind, it was a political bet. Juvenile court, he should have stayed there. 20 years, not a slap, but no one would care. System in panic cause he stood his ground, but the wheels of justice just turned him around. They wanted Eddie down, they wanted him lost. With the stakes so high, he paid the cost. Heffernan's truth rang clear in the dark. Tried to bring light, but it missed the mark. Eddie, a kid caught in a game, lost in the shuffle society.
All right, we back. You know, best people, listen. There's something, you know, that I've been trying to connect for a minute, right? Because the more that we start reading the legal work, right? And then we start looking at the Karen Reed scandal, right? The more one thing becomes painfully clear. One thing becomes clear. This isn't nothing new. This isn't shocking at all, right? The more we learn about the Karen Reed scandal, I think the one thing, like, this isn't shocking. I mean, we just get numb to it. Oh, yes, sir. We're going to have Ed and Trisha. They're ready for tomorrow. I hope you guys are too. Look, I wore my shirt that I was going to wear tomorrow. My wife had it out for our interview. Look at that. I wore the shirt. So, oh boy. But under the mass legal precedent, Commonwealth v. Bowden, a defendant has the absolute right to argue that the police did a sloppy, biased, inadequate job investigating the crime. And now I think Eddie's attorneys can also say that, listen, this is their hiring practice. This was their hiring practice back then, and they made a blueprint out of it. I mean, it's the same system that swallowed Eddie Obrien in 95 and other innocent people before Eddie. You know, and if you think about what Proctor and Goode did to Karen Reed is bad, imagine the same culture, the same arrogance, the same bias, right? But with no cameras around. Because that's what was going on back in 96, right? No social media around to catch you out there. No Mikey around on YouTube to just stop, throwing you under the bus. I mean, no body cameras around. No public pressure around, and a 15-year-old boy standing all alone against it. That was Eddie. Say his name. Say that was Eddie. I mean, the parallels aren't even coincidence. They're a blueprint. Because look at what we've seen in the Karen Reed case, right? We've seen them ignore evidence, right? We've seen false statements, right? Secret communications, all kind of crazy shit. We've seen cops protecting their friends, right? Investigators mocking victims, talking about her balloon knot and, her MS and horrible things. We've seen evidence lost, evidence mishandled, tunnel vision from day one. We've seen all this shit in the Karen Reed case. Never mind going back to Eddie, a narrative built before the facts. A department that knew and did nothing at all that there was corruption going on in their house. And now look at Eddie's case. It's the same pattern, right? Just 30 years earlier, right? It's the same Mass State Police, the same culture, the same protect our own mentality. I mean, that's a willingness to target an outsider. I mean, now look at the Eddie's case, right? It's the same pattern, just 30 years earlier, right? The same state police, the same culture, the same protect our own bullshit mentality. You still get the same, they're okay to target outsiders. The same shit up and down the board and the same political motivations, right? The same disregarded truth. Nobody wants to see the truth. But it's the same pressure. It really is, man. The same pressure to close a case fast. The only difference, right, is Eddie didn't have a community behind him like Karen does, but he's getting it now. He's getting it now. I mean, the Proctor Goode text proves what Eddie's team has said for a long time, right? When you read these messages, the cruelty, the bias, I mean, when you read these messages, it's cruel, it's bias, they're bragging, they're being bigots. This is not just a few bad apples, people. This is the whole Massachusetts State Police orchard. And this is how they talk and act back in 2022, back in 1997, back in 2020, back in 2024, 2026. It's the same old song and dance. The same old song and dance, really. Imagine how they operated in 95 when they felt comfortable doing a 15-year-old boy when nobody was watching. Eddie didn't stand a chance. And you hate it because I'm right.
He took 30 years of his life they can't get back.
You know, this is why it matters for Eddie's Rule 30. You know, but the Rule 30 says if new evidence shows the investigation was unfair, was biased, you know, you must consider the conviction. You know, you must reconsider it. Well, guess what? The Karen scandal is new evidence of Mass State Police corruption, of Canton PD corruption, of biased investigations. Officers are lying, right? They protecting insiders. Look at all the constitutional violations here. I mean, leadership cover-ups. It's all inside that PD that y'all haven't switched. It's all, you know, exactly the kind of pattern that proves Eddie's investigation was not an accident. It was a culture of the system. This is what you guys have taught other people to do under you. And we finally have the proof. You know, the system didn't just fail. It performed exactly like it was supposed to do. I said that the other day. How could this shit happen? You know, how could it happen? So this is something else that, you know, maybe got exposed. You know, and hopefully Eddie's lawyers can say, look, you know, this is something that you might be able to sue him with. You know, they bred this type of behavior. How could police ignore evidence? How could investigators lie? How could they target the wrong 15-year-old boy? You know, because this is how the system has been operating for 30 years. Right here. This is how it's been operating. 30 damn years. You know, so can the Karen Reed scandal help Eddie Obrien? Is this little information that we, you know, dug up, is this information, could it help? I mean, I think the answer is simple, right? Not only can it, it should help them. It must help them. We did all the work for you. Just pass it on to your attorneys now. Tell them the truth is finally catching up to the lies that stole Eddie's life. The truth finally catching up to the lies that stole Eddie's life, and we are not alone, not by a long shot. Man, don't go nowhere. When we come back, we're going to close this out. So, all right, we'll be right back, kids.
Eddie O'Brien, oh what a story to tell. 15 years young, caught in a prison cell. Trapped in the system, ain't that just a shame? For a crime he didn't do, they played him like a game. Pattern so clear, yet nobody sees. Intentional lies blowing in the breeze. Documented truths, but they're buried so deep. Poor kid lost his life while the system's asleep. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. The man couldn't keep his own story straight. Taking the kid's future, ain't that real fate? Welcome back, chat, got us talking hood-wise. Dark humor and metaphors disguised in the cries. Sir, hypothetically, in a murder case, ain't it funny how a fool runs this rat race? Growth don't happen in the middle of this mess. Step back, breathe, man, just let go of the stress. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes. See, you gotta let the clowns believe they succeeded. You didn't fold a break, you just got what you needed. Took it to the chin, not the heart, you see. Don't let the chaos take space in your melody. You're built different, like a lesson they missed. Teaching them boundaries, couldn't find them on a list. Drowning in a puddle, they dragged you below. But now you let them flounder, cause they reap what they sow. So here's to Eddie, just as long overdue. Fighting for the truth like we all have to do. Step back from the noise, watch him throw a fit. Free Eddie O'Brien, let's never forget this. Eddie O'Brien, oh what a story to tell. Fighting for his life in this unjust hell. Free Eddie, free him till it's backward. Guilty on paper, but he never had the hard facts. Let a fool think he won, that's how it goes. Eddie's innocence buried beneath all the woes.
Hey, welcome back. So now we're going to go over the Margo Nash book. So now we just told you all how, how this is connected. So we sent the paperwork into the right people. So hopefully people that, are real lawyers, but imagine that Eddie O'Brien, Karen Reed. I mean, the corruption we are seeing now, man, it's kind of beautiful, right? And the transition, into freeing Eddie, that's going to happen very, very soon. And then we see the next chapter of Margo Nash's book that's being printed as we speak. I mean, this is powerful stuff. This is definitely powerful stuff here. But I mean, the politics of murder, man, to everything we're watching unfold right now in the Karen Reed case, to everything we're watching unfold in the Eddie O'Brien case. I mean, if you're just new and you're just hearing about Eddie O'Brien, research him. Look up the politics of murder. Go to thetruthabouteddieobrien.com. Look at the evidence. The system that railroaded Eddie O'Brien is the same system that's tried to swallow Karen Reed. Maybe it's a different year, maybe different victim, right? Different politics, but the same damn blueprint. So we're watching these investigators today do the exact thing Margo Nash documented in Eddie's case. They ignore evidence, right? Proctor's They protect the inside. Proctor protected his friends. They target outsiders. They lie in reports. They manipulate shit. They mishandle the evidence. They mock victims. This is your police department. This is your district attorney's office. They abuse their friggin' power. And treating the truth like it's an inconvenience. And you know what the wildest part is? That they're not even subtle about it. The Proctor and Goode text, the arrogance, the bias, the cruelty, the bragging, and the willingness to destroy someone's life just because they can. That's what's a shame. They put a 15-year-old boy, the same energy Eddie faced in 95, except Eddie didn't have cameras. Eddie didn't have social media. He didn't have a community that fights for him like we do now. Put them shamrocks in the chat. Show Eddie that you support the program. And he definitely didn't have the world watching, that's for sure. He was only 15, standing alone against a machine. And we're going to talk about it tomorrow with Ed, Obrien, and TRISH. Are y'all going to be here for it? But they already decided the ending a long time ago, right? And now decades later, the mask is slipping off. So now we move into the next chapter of Margo Nash's book, right? And understand this. We're not just reading history here, right? We're reading this story of the corruption that's finally being exposed in 2026. Hopefully, right? Chapter by chapter. We're watching the Commonwealth's playbook. The same playbook they used on Eddie and people before Eddie and Bennett. The same playbook they used on Karen Reed. The same playbook they used on countless people, man. And who didn't have a voice? But we have a voice now, don't we, people? The same confirmation bias. So drop your final thought in the chat about this. Tell me if you think I'm onto something here. Did we just expose something in the Proctor Goode text messages that was just released? Will this be able to help Eddie's case? I mean, tell me what you didn't see before, But here we go. Get ready because it's going to get even deeper now. So we're going to get into this next chapter of this book. If you support the program, you can leave a super chat. You can give some memberships. Make sure your memberships are on gifted. So you can, when somebody does, get some, that's what I have to do. I got to go check that. When somebody gifts memberships, you get a free membership or, do it or give some free memberships yourself. Really appreciate that. I think all the interviews we're going to do on members only, and then we will release them to the public. But I think it's only right for the members, right, to receive something. So I think the interviews we will do on members only. It is kid. Oh, maybe I gotta punch it in manually, Venmo. Hang on. Alright, so we're gonna get into Margo Nash's book. But let's check out some comments first. At Patricia White, absolutely at Freebird, and finally bring the evil culture that exists and was worse in 95 because no one ever questioned cops or the legal system. I saw it so gross in my own life in 2007. Yes, we have some great comments here. You know, a lot of people. Freebird. The police picked a target on day one, built a fake timeline to fit that target, and intentionally ignored everything else. This is not a constitutional investigation. Now we know proof that's 100% true at Freebird. Yes, there are good ones, but it only takes one corrupt DA. No more, trust me, bro. Can we put some links, please? Eddie's Defense Fund and how to donate for a t-shirt, please. Absolutely. I actually have the link. So for a t-shirt, let me find it. Hold on. Okay, support Eddie's fight. Support Eddie's fight for freedom. Donate to his defense fund with Cash App at Edward Obrien 6 or Venmo at Edward-O'Brien-29, and we'll send you a free t-shirt or a tote bag as a thank you. If you donate $30 or more, you receive a t-shirt, V-neck or a circle neck. If you see $40 or more, you can get a tote bag. I think black and white are the two options. So what you're gonna do is after you donate that money, you're gonna screenshot, right? You're gonna screenshot your donation and send it to free eddieshirts@gmail.com along with your shipping address and the following information. And for totes, please let us know whether you want black or white. Or you could send me the screenshot and I'll send it to the appropriate people if you're having a problem. But yeah, just make the donation on Cash App or Venmo, screenshot it, email it to Eddie's T-shirts. You know, if not, send me the screenshot. I'll send it to the appropriate people, you know. So shout out to you guys. And now we gotta get the GoFundMe. Okay, so we'll go there. We'll take care of that right now. Shit, the mods doing this, which usually they do, but Hang on, people. The truth about Eddie O'Brien. There we go. Okay, now what that's pinned, that's the truth about EddieO'Brien.com website. You can go to the website. That's the first one that's pinned. And then just follow the prompts and we could walk you through it actually. Oh shit, it ain't even up there. Hang on. There it is. All right, now we have it. See this website? This is what you want. So we got the links up there in the chat. They already have the new generation set up. We can't allow that to continue to corrupt that system. Yeah, people really can't wait to hear from Ed and Trish tomorrow, and then Sunday, a great special guest. I think you're all gonna like her. There's the first hint. It's a female. So that's the hint y'all are gonna get. I think you're gonna like the guest. This community definitely has a voice, and we're just gonna keep using it, right? So drop your final thoughts in the chat. Tell me what hit you tonight. And we're going to get into this chapter so we can get it over with. The pretrial summer of 1997. We are reading the truth. Absolutely. Big shout out to some great mods. True Crime 3. Anthony's Noel. Everyone give all the mods, some shamrocks. Can the mods get some shamrocks? Can the mods get some love for keeping this place clean? Aunt Jerry, another great mod. A great legal analyst, Free Bird, Free Eddie, Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien. Stay strong in the Lord. Always respect and love to your family. All love to Eddie. And I'm sure Free Bird going to be here tomorrow for the interview. Shout out Joseph. The cops are the robbers. Absolutely. But let's get into the book, right? Okay, we'll get into this, man. After Judge Timothy Gailey's decision on May 9th of 97 sent Eddie O'Brien to Superior Court to be tried as an adult, he appeared for his arraignment there. Murder cases in Superior Court in Middlesex County can take up to 2 or 3 years to come to trial. The average time is 2 years. Eddie's trial date was set for September 19th, 1997. Just 4 months away. That's not a lot of time at all. Eddie's lawyer, Bob George, filed 2 motions at the arraignment. The first was for a stay of the proceedings so he could appeal Gailey's transfer decision. That was denied on the grounds that such a request needed to be filed in the Supreme Judicial Court, not with the appeal of Gailey's decision. George had not filed any notice of appeal or request for a stay in a higher court. He also did not do so after Eddie's arraignment. The second motion requested a continuance of the trial date because 4 months would be insufficient time to prepare for a murder trial of this magnitude. George had not filed any notice of appeal or request for a stay in the higher court. He also did not do so after Eddie's arraignment. The second motion requested a continuance of the trial date because 4 months would be insufficient time to prepare for a murder trial this big. George said he just could not be ready by then. He was right. Riley, however, had no time to waste. If he was going to run for Attorney General in 1998 elections, he had to announce and begin campaigning in the fall of 1997. Time was of the essence. He was pushing for an immediate trial. In 2002, only 20% of cases in Middlesex Superior Court were resolved within 1 year. 68% of the cases were still pending 13 to 24 months after the arraignment. George's request for more time to prepare was denied. The judge said that the case had been pending for 2 years. That's a lie. That's a lie. This case has not been pending for 2 years. I mean, the case don't stop pending until it's moved to adult court. And I believe it just got to adult court. But yeah, see, it says right here, technically, that was untrue. A case doesn't stop pending until the defendant is arraigned in Superior Court, which had only happened that day. See, that's what I thought. So begin a series of pretrial hearings and motions, some procedural and some substance. The purpose of pretrial hearings is to determine whether the parties have exchanged discovery information. So begin a series. The purpose of pretrial hearings is to determine whether the parties have exchanged discovery information appropriately, whether there are any agreed upon exhibits that will be entered into evidence at trial, and to settle any disputes about the required exchange of information and documents. It is also the time to request that certain evidence be excluded at trial, or to argue for the inclusion of disputed evidence. George was a well-known defense lawyer in Boston. He had his own two-person firm and hired other attorneys when needed for trial. When he came into Eddie's case in November of 95, he required a fee of $65,000 to litigate the case. When he came onto Eddie's case in November, he required a fee of $65,000 to litigate the case. The price went up to $85,000. Over the course of the next 2 years, the O'Briens paid him a total of $150,000. And at this point, the trial didn't even begin yet. That's right. Denying Eddie a new trial is protecting a broken system of culture of institutional rot. in my opinion, the judge should just let Eddie be free and call it a day. I hope the judge sees it that way. Imagine that $150,000 before like you even started, really got into trial. After 2 protracted transfer hearings and 4 appeals in the Supreme Judicial Court, George told Eddie's parents he was out of money in the summer of '97 and asked for an additional $150,000. Like, where did he think this family was getting all that money? They just mortgaged everything, sold everything they can to come up with the $150. They didn't have any more money. Eddie's mother was caring for 4 kids at home, the youngest of whom was 2 years old, and working in food service for Tufts University part-time. Ed worked as the manager of mail and receiving services at Harvard University. Their incomes were modest. They had already mortgaged the family home. They had already mortgaged the family home. There was just no more money to be had. No doubt George's original fee was long gone. By the time the case had consumed almost 2 years of constant work. Imagine that, 2 years. By the time they even got to trial, the money was gone. People, wake up to the truth. Share this stuff. Estimating that a criminal case will cost to defend is very difficult. These cases are not done on an hourly fee basis. When a client pays for the time expected, rather they're done on a flat fee basis. A sum that will sometimes, but not often, include the cost of expert witnesses and independent testing of the evidence. Now we'll ask Ed and Trisha tomorrow what experts they got for their $150,000. We'll talk about that tomorrow with Mr. Obrien. George quoted fee included all experts and testing. In this particular case, not even a more seasoned defense counsel could have predicted that he or she would have spent 2 years litigating the case in the juvenile court alone and make 4 separate trips to the Supreme Judicial Court before even getting to the trial itself. It's unfortunately not uncommon in the legal business for an attorney to underestimate a fee and be working for free by the end of the case. Rank and file defense counsels are rarely wealthy. It is possible to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars on a case you have not priced outright. Big law firms have the ability to absorb such losses. Smaller practitioners like Bob George don't. Lack of money may be the reason why none of the experts that George discussed with Eddie over the prior 2 years have been contacted, let alone hired. Or perhaps George believed that the case would remain in juvenile court and that Eddie would, even if found guilty, be freed after serving his 21-year sentence. whatever the reason for not having expert witnesses on board, there was no way he was going to go into hire them now with no money and prepare them for trial. Forensic experts of the necessary notoriety would have required a financial retainer months before their expected appearance. They would have required access to the documents and evidence. They would have been rendering opinions months before. If they were to do independent testing specimens, they would need to have been sent weeks or months in advance. Nonetheless, when reporter Ann Donlin of the Boston Herald asked Bob George how he would explain the forensic evidence at trial, he told her, "We have not yet tested the blood. We have our own experts." Wow. "We have our own experts that will take a look at the blood." During the many pretrial hearings conducted that summer, the judges, there were several, ruled to exclude certain evidence. Eddie's sodium amytal test was out. Profiler Greg McCrae's testimony was also out. Blood evidence would be critical. Check this out. The science of DNA was in its infancy in 1997, right? In Mass, DNA evidence was not automatically admissible into evidence. A lengthy foundation which met exact criteria had to first be established in order for an expert to testify as to DNA. But 3 weeks before Eddie's trial began, the Supreme Judicial Court issued a ruling making DNA evidence admissible at trial without the tedious foundation being established first. The court found that cell mark diagnostic specific tests and the population calculations that were used to compare results were scientifically reliable.
That's great.
The DNA evidence used these tests that the calculations would automatically be admissible into evidence. Eddie's DNA had been tested as cell mark. The tests and calculations used were identical to the ones in the new ruling. His DNA evidence would now come into evidence as a matter of law. See, now it'll come into evidence. Before, it could have been admissible. Oh, that's okay, Ed. You know, we're talking about Bob George and the experts and why there were no experts. And I told the chat we'll talk to Ed about that tomorrow. Oh, so Eddie's DNA had been identified in 4 places at the Downing home: the inside of the foyer of the inner front door, the dining room door jamb, the cellar post, and a dress hanging on a clothesline in the basement. All places that Eddie said he was. He ran down the basement. He went through the clothesline. The thin blue line. It's the big blue wall. So again, Eddie's DNA had been identified in 4 places. at the Downing home, the inside of the foyer or inner front door, the dining room door jamb, the cellar post, and a dress hanging on a clothesline in the basement. And Riley was willing, with only that evidence, to go forward and charge Eddie. But no one asked where the blood came from. Prior to this development in case law, Eddie's lawyer could have challenged the introduction of the DNA evidence as scientifically unreliable. Had he been successful, the only evidence the DNA would have had to rely on would be the fingerprints and the hilt of the knife that the DA alleged was the murder weapon. That may not have been sufficient for a conviction, especially where motive and opportunity presented such enormous problems. Because the DNA was now clearly coming into evidence, Eddie's statement about finding Downing and confronting her attacker
That's crazy.
would absolutely be required to explain his presence at the scene to the jury. Again, because the DNA was now clearly coming into evidence, Eddie's statement about finding Downing confronting her attacker would absolutely be required to explain his presence at the scene to the jury. Some of the evidence in dispute included the alleged statements that Eddie made primarily to his best friend Ryan, which, according to the district attorney, showed his motives to murder Janet. Riley argued to allow these otherwise inadmissible hearsay statements. Although the Commonwealth, in the course of its presentation of evidence, will be able to offer physical and other evidence which directly connects defendant to this crime, but the Commonwealth will not be able to do this with that evidence is explained why this happened. Why the defendant killed his neighbor. Questions of motive, questions of intent, questions of issues of state of mind. The Commonwealth's theory of this case is that this is not a case that is without a context. It's not a case where there is a total, unexplained act of violence. Our theory of the case, Your Honor, is that there was an escalating pattern of behavior on the part of the defendant, Edward Obrien. If the DA had been hoping for a sweeping order allowing all these allegedly incriminating statements to be heard by the jury, he was resoundingly defeated. The court ruled that each and every one of the acts or statements that the Commonwealth sought to introduce into evidence would require a separate and distinct inquiry as to why it was being offered and whether it was admissible under the exceptions. Everything requires why it was being offered in exceptions to the hearsay rule. And if admissible, whether it was actually relevant, this is the proper standard by which such evidence is evaluated by the court. Riley would have to fight to get each one of these statements into evidence, and he had already lost some of those fights during the transfer hearing. In another hearing in July, George asked that any unidentified fingerprints lifted at the crime scene be provided to him for comparison. Here comes another lie, people, just letting you know. Another lie is coming. The fix was in. The fix was in, people. What do y'all think up to this point? 150,000 in 1995. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Listen, people, I don't want Ed to answer this now. What do you think the over-under is on what everything cost him from 95 till now? 300,000? Is it over under 500,000? Is it over under 700,000? Is it over under $1 million? Let's think about that today, but we'll ask Ed tomorrow. What would be the over under? Riley would have to fight to get each one of these statements into evidence, and he had already lost some of those big fights during the transfer hearing. In another hearing in July, George asked that any unidentified fingerprints lifted at the crime scene be provided to him for comparison. Assistant DA Tom O'Reilly, goddamn, how many Rileys are there? How many Tom Rileys? Tom Riley, Tom O'Reilly, who was filling in while DA Tom Riley was on medical leave. Assistant DA Tom O'Reilly said no other fingerprints except those belonging to Eddie Obrien were lifted at the scene. Well, that was untrue. A report from the state crime lab dated and received after this hearing listed 7 additional prints lifted from the scene, of which 4 had insufficient details for any identification be made. The denial that any prints existed and suppression failure of the DA to hold over these prints for defense analysis are serious breaches of court discovery rules, as the prints were potentially exculpatory. Exculpatory evidence is evidence favorable to the defense that exonerates or tends to exonerate the defendants of guilt. Bob George neither failed to see the breach or ignored it. He didn't inform the court that other prints existed or file a motion to compel the DA to turn over the evidence. Those fingerprints remained unidentified. One of them was lifted from the hallway bathroom where the killer washed up and left the water running. That would have been a very important print to run through the integrated automated fingerprint identification system. Assistant DA O'Reilly further informed the court on July 25th of 95 that evidence had been sent out on July 15th of 1997 for DNA testing, and that the results were not expected back for another 4 to 5 weeks. Another false statement. The only DNA testing not complete at that time was on the metal piece, item number 21. The hilt of the knife and Janet Downing's bloody fingernail clipping. See, the fingernail clipping had already been sent out for testing a month earlier, but testing had been ordered suspended until further notice. Why would you suspend the testing on the fingernail clipping? Was you not being honest? Why would you stop it? Does anybody have any idea why was the fingernail test stopped? So let's see what else is here. Mike will have to answer that, I guess. Robert, I don't think so. I believe Robert, what's the question? Because they didn't want another suspect. Variable leads in neighborhoods were systematically pushed aside to keep the focus solely on Eddie. Where was that? So why would they stop the testing a month earlier? But testing had been ordered suspended till further notice. The letter of transmittal dated June 27th, accompanying the fingernail clipping, said, "Please hold the enclosed bloodstained fingernail clipping from Janet Downing until you receive authorization from DA Tom Riley. Upon authorization, please conduct PCR, STR testing on these specimens." The knife hilt had been sent to Selmark in Maryland a year earlier. Initial PCR testing on that showed no trace of Eddie's DNA. Why would the prosecution try to obfuscate the fact that this evidence was not sent out on July 15th? Laboratory reports would eventually reveal the truth. It didn't make any sense unless the prosecution assumed that their hold and discontinued testing orders would not be included in the letters between the state lab and Selmark of the final report. Studying these letters and reports took a considerable amount of time. Especially to connect the dots and clearly see the misrepresentation made to the court. When you receive complicated DNA and scientific reports right before a trial, the chances that you are noticing the dates that specimens are submitted and the dates that they are tested and cross-referencing. Unless, of course, you support something unusual has occurred with the evidence. In Eddie's case, all the evidence was highly unusual, questionable, and required the kind of in-depth effort has now brought these irregularities into full view. The pretrial hearing whereas reported misrepresentation of court when receiving. Unless, of course, your suspect, something unusual has occurred with the evidence. In Eddie's case, all the evidence was highly unusual and questionable and required the kind of in-depth effort that has now brought these irregularities into full view. The pretrial hearing took place on 8 separate days over the course of the summer, ending on September 8, 1997, just 7 days before jury selection would begin. Bob George didn't have months to spend scrutinizing discovery material. He barely had time to draft an open statement. Wow.
That's crazy.
Later on, we'll go into chapter 17, but that was up to chapter 16. Spent all that money, no experts, stop testing. You know, you can't continue to test at that point. You know, give me a minute and I'll be right back with some thoughts.
Where the whispers play, the door of the frame holds the secrets of the day. Locked on to Eddie, they whispered his name. Caught in a tempest, a life gone insane. Down in the dark, where the sailor path runs, a set of keys hit the dirt under disappearing suns. A house key, a car key, lost in the rush. But the state swept it up like a hand in the crush. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past, let Eddie rise high. Unseal the notes, expose all the blocks. Rayleigh trapped Eddie in a manufactured box. 30 years of hidden facts buried in the track. It is time to give Eddie Obrien his freedom back. Unseal the box, break down the lock. Let the truth ring louder than the courthouse clock. 3 decades of silence, a cold prison shell. Refuse to lie, they cast a wicked spell. No remorse in their eyes, they judge from the booth. But Eddie stands tall, anchored in truth. Summer is opening, the science is real. The manufactured box begins to peel. Voices collide as hope takes its stand. With every heartbeat echoes a drowning band. Eddie's freedom cry, can you hear it loud? Breaking through the darkness, piercing the shroud. 30 years in chains, but the truth won't die. Unseal the past.
Okay, man, that was a great episode. You know, we touched first on the Karen Reed stuff, you know, made the connection, you know, to, you know, what we found out yesterday for the lawsuit, Proctor, the good notes, you know, that, you know, Mass is just breeding these crooked little bastards, you know. But and one of the most important questions, I think, when we jumped into chapter 16, you know, in Margo Nash, Politics of Murder. I've been up for like a week, it feels like, you know, but one of the most important questions, it exposes exactly how politically this case, Eddie Obrien, really, really was. I mean, why did Tom Riley stop testing after Eddie was excluded? The more testing meant more truth. You don't want more truth to come out because the truth isn't on Riley's side. And the truth didn't point to Eddie, right? So, we got to stop testing. When lab results came back and said Eddie is excluded, well, that should have been the momentum that stops the investigation. The search for the real killer should have started at that point, but Riley didn't want the real killer. That didn't help Riley. Riley needed a kid. He tried so hard to get a kid in Deanna Kremen's case. When that happened, it wasn't working out for the guy. He needed a young buck. He needed a juvenile killer. So that should have been the moment this shit stopped and you start looking for the real killer that could have been running around Cambridge killing all these people. But Riley didn't want the real killer, right? No, that would have been too smart, right? He wanted a conviction, right? Who cares about there's a killer running around on the streets? I want to put someone in jail. Whether they did it or not, I need a conviction. I need a headline. I need something to catapult my horrible career. More testing? No, that ain't what I need. I need more evidence pointing the way. Yeah. So we shut it down. Because if they kept testing, they risked identifying someone else. And that someone else might have been someone inside the house, right? Somebody that's been connected to the Downing family, someone that's politically inconvenient. Would it be someone connected to the family? Somebody inside the house? Who would be the real killer? Someone that the Commonwealth didn't want to expose? Maybe. Riley was about to let science blow up his narrative, so he stopped the science. Because at that point, the case is already built, right? And the evidence just has to match the story, right? So this is the same pattern that we see in the Karen Reed case, right? Pick the suspect, right? Build the story, second. Ignore the evidence is third. Protect the insiders, right? You have to protect them. And once Riley decided that Eddie was the killer, right, everything had to fit that description. Testing that excluded Eddie didn't fit, so he stopped it, right? Because admitting Eddie was excluded, that shit would have exposed investigating as corrupt. And he didn't want to expose it as being corrupt. The timeline don't fit. The blood evidence didn't fit. What'd your boy say? If the glove don't fit, make it fit. And then the public would have asked, right? So why are you charging a 15-year-old boy? Riley couldn't afford that question. That's why Riley stopped testing. You ask, why did he stop testing because the shit didn't fit. The DNA didn't fit. The science didn't fit. So why are you charging a 15-year-old boy? Riley couldn't afford that question. That this is Riley's prisoner of war is what Eddie Obrien is, his trophy. So he buried the evidence that contradicted him, because the case was political. It wasn't factual. And they were clapping for me. Oh yeah, we really appreciate everybody. The summer of 1997, it wasn't about justice. It was about optics, right? Riley was running for attorney general. He needed a tough on-crime win. This dude needed some high-profile convictions. He needed a villain, and Eddie was the easiest target. Listen, yo, we might be back tonight, but we definitely be back tomorrow with Ed and TRISH Obrien, man. We need to pump that up, share that, and then Sunday we got another great interview scheduled. Man, this testing that provided Eddie's innocence would have ruined Riley's political moment, so he stopped testing. Listen, everybody, we always remember, you couldn't turn your head and see something about Eddie Obrien back then. Great job. Really appreciate it. Thank you. It actually means a lot. I work on this, night and day. When I'm working, I'm thinking of present, information. Thank you, Mike and True Crime. Absolutely. We turn this down a little. Go. But I think the bottom line is in plain English, right? Tom Riley stopped testing. Why? The science was clearing Eddie, and he couldn't have that. Tom Riley could not have the science clearing your boy Eddie. It's a shame how you could really send a man to prison. But this wasn't about justice in this case, It wasn't about Janet. It wasn't about evidence. But shout out to everybody. Let me check. Super chats. Oh, that easy. You only got one. Shout out to Freebird for the 20-piece. Mike, thank you. You are appreciated greatly. Let's go. Free Eddie. Eddie is innocent. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate y'all. jury was poisoned. Yep, from Weld on, absolutely. But yeah, great show we'll have tomorrow, man. Tomorrow should be lit. You know, match the energy, everybody. You know, memberships that are gonna be going on. You know, shout out to everybody. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a public interview. I just, you know, want it to be good. But yeah, we're gonna have Big Ed and Trish on. You know, I think Ed needs to bring Trish along, you know, to keep him, you know, easy there. No, shout out. They're very great people, man. Great family. Great family. But my people, y'all, appreciate you. We out. Am I missing anything? You know, shout out to Ed, shout out Robert, shout out Patricia White, shout out Freebird, you know, 2 cents worth. Can't read case put a spotlight on police corruption, absolutely. God knows who the police were putting a spotlight on. Big Ed said, thank you, Christina. And not your daughter. Okay, yes, yep. Nope, she didn't do nothing. The daughter don't do much. My oldest daughter she comes to watch her dad, you know, rock off the mic. You know, she thought it was so cool when I was younger to take my BCI to school. She took my police report and she started showing all her friends, like, watch out for my dad, look what my dad did. Then I wondered why everybody was looking at me like I was like, you know what I mean? Like, look at this freaking guy over here. I'm like, what are these kids, man? They're trying to get me jammed up. You know? They're trying to get me jammed up. Yep, she was showing my BCI all around. My federal BCI. Not even old Bush's state BCI, the federal BCI. Right, people, man, we out of here, man. Appreciate y'all. There's me. Okay.
In a world painted gray, where shadows dance and weep, a boy named Eddie faced storms too heavy to keep. 15 and alone, with the fire burning deep, in a kaleidoscope of wrongs, a heart too brave to sleep. They called him a menace, a child lost in sin. But behind those tired eyes, 100 dreams begin. And Riley stood firm, shaking hands with despair. There's no room for kindness, no chance that he's fair. But Eddie saw the light in a lashed out embrace. Could a heart once trapped mend a system's disgrace? Oh, Eddie, you stood a beacon in the night, rehabilitating souls, igniting wrongs to right, changing words to actions within those heavy walls. Maybe you're the miracle that answers broken calls. Time in a cell taught the lessons of life, how to touch the lost hands amidst grief and strife. Eddie raised his voice, for the silence brought pain. A minister to the broken, he cast away the chain. In a world painted gray, where shadows dance and weep, a boy named Eddie faced storms too heavy to keep. 15 and alone, with a fire burning deep, in a kaleidoscope of wrongs, a heart too brave to sleep. They called him a menace, a child lost in sin, but behind those tired eyes,
with stars in his eyes, caught up in a game where the truth often dies. They said they keep it fair, but it was all a charade. Politics ran the case, and the justice betrayed. They pointed fingers at Eddie, just a kid with a dream, in a world that judged him harshly, tearing apart at the seams. So Eddie, they sacrificed you to make it look right, in a broken system where darkness swallows the light. With your spirit they played, just a pawn on their board. In the echoing silence, your name became a sword. Margo was pressured, he folded under the weight. The DA was showboating, sealing Eddie's fate. They changed all the laws to fit their own design, removing the judge who sought a justice. Check it, these podcasts rolling in with their lies, using articles, trash and truth, that's their disguise. Riley planted seeds, watch the chaos unfold, spitting hit. In the shadows of a house where the whispers play, the door of the frame holds the secrets of the day. Locked on to Eddie, they whispered his name. Caught in a tempest, a life gone insane. Down in the dark, where the cellar path runs, a set of keys hit the dirt under disappearing suns. A house key, a car key, lost in the rush, but the state swept it up like a hand in the crush. Eddie's freedom cry. Now listen closely, I got a story to tell about a world that spun into a living hell. In the mid-90s, truth lost its place. Oh, now, hey. Now listen closely, I got a story to tell about a world that spun into a living hell. In the mid-90s, truth lost its place, while the system turned its back on the human race. Hey, all they cared about was filling up the beds. Didn't matter who they grabbed, just fill up the spread. They took the innocent kids, tossed them aside. Evidence was trash, it was a twisted ride. Bodies in the system, just numbers on a page. The system didn't care about the pain or the rage. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. Stand-up dudes taking the order they kept, left the neighborhood shattered, families wept. Addicts in the alleys, shadows of the past. We're stuck in the cycle, feeling outclassed. Why do the corners look like a zombie show? It's by design, we all know it, don't you know? It didn't happen by accident, it was all planned. The system made it happen, they had the upper hand. In the chaos in the night, there's a deeper truth. A kid named Eddie Obrien, lost in his youth. 15 years strong, thrown in a ruthless game. A machine built to crush, no mercy, just shame. Politics and fear, the media spins their lies. Eddie stood no chance, neath the soulless skies. Now look around, see the streets in despair. Families breaking apart, chaos in the air. Wonder why the youth are lost in the haze. A puppet show of lives caught in a cruel maze. But Eddie's not just a name in a fading light. He's a face of a struggle, he'll put up a fight. With the truth in his heart, he'll rise from the ground. Voices in the shadows, together we're found. So listen closely, this story ain't done. We're reclaiming our truth, we're taking back the sun. For every fallen brother, every shattered dream, we'll rise up together, united as a team. Hey!